Except for the opening and the concluding scene, the entirety of 12 Angry Men takes place inside a jury room. Now, despite this spatial limitation, there's a lot to learn in terms of cinematography from this film, the most important of which is lensing. Lensing, to be honest, is a tricky aspect of cinematography. The camera records the action on either a film or a digital sensor. The light required to form the image enters through a lens. A lens primarily has two variables, f-stop and focal length. F-stop decides how much of the light will enter through to the sensor by controlling the aperture. The focal length is the more interesting one. Focal length decides the size and the shape of the image. A long lens crushes the image and makes it flat, giving a shallow depth of field. A wide lens stretches the image out and sometimes distorts it. The choice of the lens determines how the audience will interpret the story at a subconscious level. In 12 Angry Men, Sidney Lumet used lenses with different focal length at different stages of the film. If we divide the film into 3 acts, the first act was filmed with wider lenses, roughly 18 to 28 mm. Another interesting thing to notice is the camera angle. The first act is filmed with the camera looking slightly down on the characters. As the film progresses, the camera angle moves to the eye level. The lens choices now move to around 50 to 70 mm. These lenses start to compress the space to introduce a claustrophobic feeling. Unlike in the previous act where we were a distant observer, Lumet slowly makes us participate in the proceedings. Finally, in the last act, the lens choice moved to a telephoto lens, something around 100 mm. The human figures are now crushed in the frame. The close-ups become more dramatic. There's hardly any room to breathe in this jury room. The camera angle also looks up on the character, making them even more imposing. The newly introduced ceiling acts as an additional element to accentuate the claustrophobic atmosphere. Another thing to notice is the way lighting changes throughout the film. As there's less ambiguity at the start, the lighting replicates the simplicity of the proceedings with an evenly lit room. The shadows on the faces of the characters aren't prominent, and the background walls hardly have any shadows on them. The film progresses with the day approaching the evening time. Prominent shadows now paint the walls and separate the characters from their background. The shadows on the faces of the characters also become sharp and distinct as the film reaches its conclusion. Here is a comparison of close-ups across 3 distinct stages of the film. Now the question is, why do all of this? What's the point of going through all this technical hassle when the story can be well conveyed through the performance of the actors alone? And the answer is, to create an experience. The point isn't to tell the audience which jury member changes his decision at what point. The point is to make the audience experience the proceedings in such a way that they understand why a person would change his mind. For that, the director has to turn the audience from a passive observer to an active participant. He achieves that with his acute use of lighting, camera angles, and especially of the lensing. The effect works on us subliminally and we become part of the proceedings. And that for me stands out as great filmmaking. So if you're planning your next film, try to see if there's any possibility to use lensing in a creative way. Because as a director, it is your job to make the audience feel the story. It is your job to create an experience. Otherwise, what's the point of being a director?